The galaxy had never seen such a sight. 9,000 ships, silent and perfect, their hulls reflecting the void of space as they hovered over Earth. They had arrived, as planned, and the warlords of the Galactic Empire felt the quiet thrill of impending victory. The fleet's commander, Admiral Zorl, surveyed the data streams cascading across his control deck. His form, an elegant blend of crystalline tendrils and cold, hard exoskeleton, exuded the calm confidence of a being who had conquered entire systems with little more than a thought. "Phase 1, he commanded, his voice an unervingly emotionless drone. "Activate orbital bombardment. No survivors." The words carried the weight of inevitability. Earth was a backwater planet, its people a collection of bickering primates. They were no match for the precision and power of the Empire. The command ships, more like floating cities than war machines, shifted into formation. Their massive cannons, still locked away in their underbellies, began to pulse with an ominous light. The planetary defense systems, if they even existed, would crumble under their might. Earth had no idea what was coming. On Earth, in stark contrast to the order and certainty of the Empire, there was only confusion. No global alarms blared, no urgent government broadcasts. Instead, a subtle calm hung over the world. Humans went about their business, some unaware, others half-heartedly aware, of the massive fleet now hovering above them. This was not the response that Zorl had expected. The Empire scouts had reported no significant advancements in Earth's technology. No phase ships, no orbital defense platforms, nothing capable of resisting an invasion of this scale. He flicked a tendril, activating the first phase of the assault. Energy beams, no wider than a streetlight, surged down from the motherships. Each beam was capable of reducing a city block to ashes in seconds. Earth would burn. The fleets would land, and the planet's resources would be plundered. But something went wrong. Instead of the expected chaos, the beams hit the ground, only to be absorbed. For a moment, nothing made sense. The beams should have left craters, firestorms, devastation. Instead, they flickered, bending, twisting into the air, and then disappeared entirely. The ship's sensors began to malfunction, struggling to identify anything they were targeting. Zorl frowned, his thoughts racing. "This is not possible." He issued a new command. "Activate the ground assault." And still, nothing went as planned. The landings were a mess. Their precision dropships, capable of placing troops anywhere on Earth's surface within moments, were now malfunctioning. Soldiers spilled out into empty fields, lost in unfamiliar terrain, their suits unable to recalibrate to the unexpected energy signature of Earth. And their AI drones, once the pinnacle of the Empire's tech, now seemed confused, sluggish. Their once flawless behavior faltered, glitching. Zorl's mind whirled. The human forces should have been panicking. Instead, they appeared absent. "Is this a trap?" Zorl muttered to himself. His command bridge hummed as his officers scrambled, trying to regain control of their lost systems. "Admiral," one of his subordinates spoke nervously, "the enemy network appears fragmented. We've never seen a planetary grid so disorganized." The officer's voice trembled. It was rare for anyone to show fear in the presence of the Admiral, but the situation was becoming increasingly perplexing. Zorl's tendrils flexed, his patience thinning. "What do you mean, fragmented?" "The human networks, sir. They're decentralized. We can't access key systems, and even their planetary defense systems are set to random intervals. It's as if they are playing a game with us." Zorl considered the report. "This is no game. Prepare Phase 2. A full planetary sweep. We will reduce their cities to dust." But even as the command went out, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Something was wrong. The humans were acting differently than expected. The silence on Earth didn't feel like surrender. It felt deliberate. Zorl's mind raced. Could it be that Earth's primitive species had something up their sleeve? The thought was absurd. A species that still communicated with radios that hadn't even mastered FTL travel. How could they possibly outsmart a force like the Galactic Empire? He paused and looked out the viewport. The fleet was in position now, and he could see the outline of Earth beneath them. It was vast, untamed, and full of potential for the Empire. This was supposed to be easy, but as the ships began to fire once again, something strange happened. One of the massive warships, positioned in the center of the formation, suddenly blinked out of existence. The sensors blinked red, and a series of alarms blared. A small, inexplicable disturbance spread across the fleet. The ship hadn't just been hit, it had been undone, its entire structure dissolving as if it had never existed in the first place. Zorl's heart skipped a beat. "Report!" he demanded, his voice snapping with authority. His officers scrambled in vain to assess the situation, but there was no immediate explanation. What the hell just happened? Zorl's voice rose, but there was no answer. The officers were silent, mouths open, eyes wide in disbelief. Zorl's tendrils began to twitch, a clear sign of his growing frustration. "Explain this," he snapped. One of the officers finally stammered out an answer. "Sir, the ship's core, it was hacked." "Hacked?" Zorl echoed incredulously. "This is impossible. No species could break through our systems, let alone." He was interrupted as another warship in the rear of the formation blinked from existence. Another, and another. Now the panic began to spread among the command crew. Officers, once calm, started rushing to their stations, frantically searching for any sign of the culprit. But no answers came, just the nagging feeling that something had shifted, something had changed. Zorl was no longer calm. His fleet, his pride, was being dismantled before his eyes, and by what? A primitive, backward species that barely even understood the concept of space travel? "Get me a full scan of the planet," he ordered. There was a long pause. The officer at the control panel hesitated. "Sir, we've lost all connection with the outer satellites. There's no way to get an accurate read. Earth's energy signatures are chaotic, fragmented, random." Zorl's breath caught in his throat. This couldn't be happening. He had planned for every possible contingency. How could the humans possibly? The words hung in the air as the last of the fleet's communication systems faltered, sputtering and dying. In the span of minutes, the once mighty armada, poised to conquer Earth, had been reduced to disarray. And all Zorl could hear, as his once proud fleet teetered on the brink of collapse, was a single mocking message broadcast across the comms. "Welcome to Earth." The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. Zorl stared at the empty space where his flagship used to be, his mind unable to comprehend the destruction. For the first time in centuries, doubt crept into his thoughts. How could something so insignificant as Earth's primitive technology be capable of this? His fleet was still intact, but barely. The fleet's automated systems were scrambling to adjust to the new tactics, but they had no idea what they were up against. And neither did Zorl. He needed answers, and he needed them now. He looked to his officers. "Status report." One of the officers, a smaller creature with segmented limbs, scanned the screens before him. "Admiral, we've lost communication with the ground troops. The automated landing zones are failing. The soldiers are scattered, unable to regroup. It's as if they're being guided into traps." Zorl's mind raced. Traps? He hadn't expected this. The human planet was a chaotic mess of competing factions, but they didn't have the sophistication to organize something so precise. There had to be some form of intelligence at work here, something beyond what their sensors had detected. "Is this an illusion? Are they baiting us?" "Impossible, sir. The traps are real," came the response, a note of uncertainty in the officer's voice. "Our soldiers are stumbling through familiar terrain, but the resistance is unpredictable. They're not following any patterns. And our drones." Zorl didn't wait for him to finish. He'd seen it firsthand. The AI drones, once the crown jewel of the Empire's military, were acting as if they had no idea how to function. Their programmed algorithms, designed to identify and neutralize threats in an instant, were failing in every engagement. They were malfunctioning at the worst possible moments, hesitating, misfiring, and sometimes even retreating. This wasn't just the humans throwing random acts of chaos. Something was wrong with their systems. Someone was guiding the chaos, and that terrified him. He turned to his tactical officer, a sharp-eyed creature known for his quick mind. "Can you track down their source of interference?" The officer worked quickly, his arms moving over the consoles. "It's not the humans' interference, sir. We're being jammed, and it's not a standard jamming signal. It's like they're responding in real time. Our systems aren't just being overwhelmed. They're adapting. Whatever this is, they've already figured out how to counter our most advanced tech. Every time we try to correct our systems, they throw us off again. It's like a mind game." Zorl's frustration grew. "Are you telling me that these people, these primitive creatures, have developed some form of technology that can outthink us? That can read us?" "They're not reading us, Admiral," the officer said quietly. "They're anticipating us. They've been studying us. And we've made it easy." Zorl's mandibles clicked, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "Admiral, their technology isn't primitive. The officer hesitated. "It's unpredictable. It's like nothing we've encountered before. They've been keeping it hidden." Zorl's gaze sharpened. "Hidden? How?" "We've been studying their planet for centuries. Our intelligence reports showed nothing of their capabilities beyond basic military tech. But this wasn't in the data." The officer swallowed hard. "The human minds, they don't think like we do. They don't follow the same logic. They're chaotic, yes, but their thinking is—" The officer paused, as if trying to find the right words. "It's unconventional. They don't follow our patterns. They never have. And that's why we're failing." Zorl felt his irritation rise. "Stop speaking in riddles. What exactly are you suggesting?" The officer's tone was tense. "They're learning from us. They're using our own tactics against us. And they're doing it faster than we can adapt. I think they've figured out how we think. They've already begun to predict our next move before we even make it." Zorl turned away, his thoughts racing. If the humans had truly understood how to outwit their most sophisticated tech, how could they have done it so quickly? And why hadn't the Empire detected this sooner? The thought was maddening. The Empire was the pinnacle of technological achievement. There was no way Earth could have developed something so potent in such a short time. His mind spun back to the one thing he couldn't shake. How had the first warship been destroyed? Someone had gotten through their systems. The humans didn't have the firepower to take them on, not in a direct confrontation. So what was it? What was Earth hiding? His officers continued to work, desperate to regain control, but every time they thought they had a solution, it slipped away. His fleet systems were still being overrun by those same unpredictable variables, and nothing made sense. Zorl had expected a swift conquest. He had planned for resistance, but nothing like this. "Admiral," came the voice of his chief engineer, who had been silent until now. "We've confirmed something else." Zorl turned to him, his patience nearing its limit. "What now?" "The human networks. They're not decentralized. They're fragmented, but they're connected more than we first realized. They've created some kind of system where every individual is an agent. They share information in real time, but it's almost like they don't even need a central hub. They've hacked the concept of communication itself." Zorl's mind reeled. "What are you telling me? That every human is part of a network?" The engineer shook his head. "No, not in the way we understand it. They're part of something bigger than a network. They've created a consciousness. It's not just technology. It's a living, breathing entity. They're not a species anymore. They've evolved into something else entirely." The words hung in the air like a weight. Zorl had heard of such theories before, species that merged with their tech, forming a symbiotic relationship with their machines. But it was always a myth, a story to frighten the lesser races. Humans, with their primitive biology, could never have achieved something so complex. Yet here they were, fighting the Empire with a power no one could fully understand. Zorl clenched his mandibles. "You're telling me that their power is organic?" The engineer's eyes flickered. "Not just organic. Something beyond our comprehension. We've underestimated them, Admiral. And now we're paying the price." Zorl's thoughts raced. He had always prided himself on the Empire's ability to crush any challenge. Yet here, in the presence of these so-called primitive humans, his fleet, his empire, was faltering. A surge of anger coursed through him. He would not be bested by an inferior species. "Prepare the next phase," he commanded. "I don't care what it takes. We crush them. Now." But even as the words left his mouth, the nagging doubt continued to eat away at him. How could they defeat something that was learning faster than they could respond? How could they defeat an enemy that had already seen all their moves before they even made them? The humans weren't just fighting. They were playing a game no one understood except them. And in the heart of it all, Zorl realized they might have just made the greatest mistake of his life. Zorl's hands clenched around the armrests of his command chair, his mind a whirlwind of strategies and possibilities. His officers were still scrambling, but the tide of confusion had turned into something far more dangerous. The humans, once nothing more than primitive, chaotic creatures, were now the ones who controlled the flow of battle. The Empire's most advanced technology, AI drones, phase ships, automated weapon systems, was failing, not because it was inadequate but because it had been outthought. Zorl had never encountered such a scenario. He had always been the one pulling the strings, the one who understood the rules of war better than any species in the galaxy. "Admiral," one of his officers called out, a high-ranking tactician who had once served as a rising star in the Empire's military. "We've lost another ship, this time one of the elite destroyers. It's gone, no trace, no wreckage. Just nothing." Zorl's gaze hardened. This was no longer about conquest. It was a battle for survival. His fleet was falling apart. Systems were malfunctioning in ways they couldn't explain, and every time they attempted to regain control, someone interfered. The humans were turning the tables. And with every passing moment, the Empire's confidence was eroding. "Track the source of the interference," Zorl ordered, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "I want to know who's responsible for this." But the officer only looked up, his face pale. "We can't, Admiral. It's like they're everywhere. They don't follow any kind of pattern. It's as if they've mapped out our every weakness." Zorl's mandibles clicked in frustration. He had read the reports, had seen the data from the scouts. Earth had been a disjointed, barely united planet. But now it felt like they were up against a unified force, a collective intelligence. Their tactics were not random. They were deliberate. They were anticipating every move Zorl made. And he had no idea who or what he was really fighting. "What are you suggesting?" Zorl demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "We've underestimated them, sir," the officer replied, almost apologetically. "The humans don't just fight like we do. They don't just react. They—" Zorl cut him off, his voice sharp. "Stop speaking in riddles. What's happening to my fleet?" The officer hesitated before continuing. "Admiral, the truth is, we've been fighting shadows. What we thought were human forces scattered across the planet. It's not. There's no central leadership, no army. They're everywhere and nowhere. They're systems, they're soldiers, they're part of something larger. It's like they're tapping into a deeper network. A living, breathing entity." Zorl sat back, his mind reeling. A living entity? That was impossible. No species, especially one as primitive as Earth's, could have evolved a collective intelligence to rival the Empire's strategic genius. It was a concept that didn't make sense. And yet, the evidence was right in front of him. His elite destroyers had been neutralized, not through brute force, but through some unseen force that manipulated their systems. Every attack, every countermeasure was already anticipated. The humans weren't just reacting to the Empire's moves. They were controlling the game. Zorl gritted his teeth. This was a challenge unlike any he had faced before. The Empire's forces were vast and nearly limitless, But now they were confronting something far more dangerous than a well-armed resistance. They were confronting an intelligence that could adapt, learn, and counter any move made against it. "We need to understand how they're doing this," Zorl muttered. "Is it biological? Technological? Whatever it is, we need to know before it's too late." One of his officers, a young strategist who had been working feverishly at a console, spoke up. "Admiral, we're starting to detect irregularities in their communications. It's not a standard signal, but we believe they're encrypting their messages using a method we haven't seen before." Zorl's eyes narrowed. "Can we decrypt it?" The officer hesitated. We don't think it's a code in the traditional sense. It's more like they're using their neural networks to communicate. We've never seen anything like it. It's not just encrypted. It's alive." Zorl clenched his fists. "Alive? I don't care if it's organic or mechanical. Figure it out, now." As the officers scrambled to implement new tactics, Zorl tried to think through the situation with cold, logical precision. But it was impossible. He was losing control. His best officers, the brightest minds of the Empire, were stumped by an enemy that shouldn't even be capable of this. Earth's primitive technology shouldn't have been able to pull this off. And yet here they were, facing a force that knew their every move before they made it. Zorl couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were playing some kind of game, a game with rules that only they understood. Every time the Empire thought it had the upper hand, they were blindsided by something new. An unexpected counter, a failed attack, a ship disappearing into thin air. He turned back to his officers. "We've been too focused on the wrong aspects. We've been thinking of Earth as a place to conquer. But now I see the truth." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had been fighting a war of invasion, but Zorl's words were beginning to strike a different chord. "We're not just fighting humans," Zorl continued, his voice gaining strength. "We're fighting their evolution. They've created something far beyond what we can understand. This isn't about taking a planet. It's about survival. They've adapted too quickly. If we don't stop them now, we will be destroyed." The room fell silent. The weight of Zorl's words hung heavy in the air. It was no longer just about winning. It was about stopping something that had the potential to undo everything the Empire had built. Zorl had always prided himself on being able to control the battlefield, to manipulate his forces and outthink his enemies. But this was different. The humans weren't just playing by their own rules, they were making up the rules as they went along. And Zorl had no idea how to keep up. "Admiral, we've lost contact with another ship," came a voice from across the room. Zorl slammed his fist onto the console. The losses were mounting, each one a blow to his pride, his authority, and his fleet's strength. The humans were relentless, moving in ways that defied all logic. "How many ships are left?" he demanded, his voice barely contained. 10, came the grim reply. "Out of 9,000. Zorl's mind raced, the full weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had come to Earth to conquer, to claim victory for the Empire. Now, Earth was teaching him a lesson he would never forget. Never underestimate the capacity for life to adapt, evolve, and fight back. And if he didn't figure out how to deal with this force, the Empire would be gone, along with everything it had ever stood for. "Prepare the fleet for one final assault," Zorl commanded, his voice cold and devoid of hope. "We're going to break them, or we die trying." But deep inside he knew, this wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about survival. And the longer they fought, the more Zorl realized that the human force he had underestimated was not just fighting for their planet. They were fighting for something much bigger, something he couldn't even begin to comprehend. And the worst part? They were winning. Zorl stood at the center of his command room, his mind swirling with possibilities and dread. The final assault was imminent, and yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that his strategy was already obsolete. The humans, those insignificant creatures from Earth, had pushed him to the brink of despair, and now, it seemed like they had one final, devastating move left. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, now appeared vulnerable, teetering on the edge of total annihilation. His officers, pale and exhausted, worked furiously at their stations, but their eyes held the same haunting uncertainty. The last remnants of their fleet were battered, their weapons misfiring, their systems failing. The Empire had never encountered anything like this before, and yet, in the distance, the humans seemed to be getting stronger, more organized, more unpredictable. Zorl clenched his mandibles, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had always believed that the Empire's superiority, its vast technological might, was the ultimate trump card. But now, as his officers frantically tried to adapt, he realized that this battle was no longer one of technology. It was one of sheer will, of survival itself. "We're not going to win this, are we?" one of his senior officers asked, her voice raw with fatigue. "This isn't a battle anymore. It's a slaughter." Zorl's eyes narrowed, his mind wrestling with the cold, hard truth of her words. "We will win," he replied, his voice strained but firm. "We must win. There's no other option." But deep inside he wasn't so sure. The humans had exploited his fleet's every weakness, outwitting, outmaneuvering, and outthinking them at every turn. They had turned his most advanced technology against him, creating traps that had crippled his best ships, forcing him into a position where he had no choice but to fight on his back foot. He had underestimated them, but he would not make that mistake again. "We're preparing for a final push," one of his commanders reported, trying to keep the last remnants of hope alive in his voice. "But we've lost so many ships. It's just not enough anymore. The humans, they're—" His voice trailed off, but the look in his eyes said it all. "They're not just resisting anymore. They're taking the fight to us." Zorl's mind raced. He needed a solution. He needed something that could give him the upper hand, something that could tip the scales back in the Empire's favor. "What's their next move?" Zorl demanded, turning toward his tactical officer. The officer hesitated before replying, his voice strained with the weight of the situation. "We don't know, Admiral. The humans, they're unpredictable. They've thrown us off at every turn. We thought we had them cornered, but they always find a way out. They're everywhere, yet they're nowhere. It's like they know exactly what we're going to do before we do it." Zorl slammed his fist against the console. He could feel the walls closing in around him. His fleet was broken, his officers were losing faith, and the humans, they were still coming. The truth was undeniable now. The Empire's might, its technological superiority, meant nothing when faced with an enemy that could think outside the rules, adapt faster than they could react. "Then what are we fighting for?" Zorl muttered under his breath, barely aware that his officers had heard him. "What are we really up against?" One of his closest aides stepped forward, her voice calm but laced with the same tension that gripped the entire room. "We're fighting for the future of the Empire. If we don't take Earth, if we don't crush these humans now, there will be nothing left of us. We cannot afford failure." Zorl's eyes flickered with determination. She was right. Failure was not an option. If the Empire fell, it would not just be the end of his reign. It would be the end of everything the Empire had built. The galaxy would descend into chaos. The humans could not be allowed to win. He would not let them. "We will fight until the end," Zorl said, his voice resolute, though the doubt gnawed at him. "Prepare the fleet for a final strike. If this is our last chance, we will take it." But even as he gave the orders, a strange sense of foreboding lingered in the back of his mind. The humans were something else entirely, and it wasn't just their technology that scared him. It was their capacity for growth, their ability to adapt, evolve, and overcome. No species, not even the Empire, had ever faced an enemy like this. The humans were something new, and the more Zorl thought about it, the more he feared that they were more than just a threat. They were a sign of something greater, something beyond the comprehension of the Empire. "Admiral," one of his officers spoke up, breaking through his thoughts. "There's a strange anomaly in the human command structure. We've analyzed their communications, and there's something we missed." It's not just a tactical advantage. They're not just using technology to adapt. They're spit it out. Zorl snapped, the weight of his frustrations overflowing. They're evolving, the officer said, almost incredulously. They've built something, not just with their machines, but within their minds. Their consciousness is growing, shifting. It's as if they've unlocked a potential we didn't know existed. Zorl's breath caught in his throat. Evolving? The thought was preposterous. The humans were a biological species, not some genetic experiment. But as he listened to the officer's report, he couldn't help but wonder if this was what he had been sensing all along. The humans weren't just resisting. They were changing the very nature of the war. "Admiral, we've intercepted a message," one of the officers called out. "It's encrypted, but we've been able to decode part of it. It's a warning." Zorl's heart raced. "A warning from who?" The officer looked up, his face pale. "It's from their leaders, or what we thought were their leaders. They say they're beyond leadership now. The message is cryptic, but it's clear they are preparing for something. Something we won't be able to stop." Zorl's mind reeled. This was it. This was the final twist in the nightmare that had become his invasion. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were evolving, growing into something beyond what any of them had anticipated. And in doing so, they had become a force more powerful than the Empire could ever hope to face. The final assault was about to begin, but Zorl realized too late that the real battle had already been lost. The humans had already won, not through force, but through something far more terrifying. Their ability to change, to adapt, and to evolve faster than anyone could ever predict. As the last of his fleet prepared for the inevitable, Zorl knew one thing for certain. Earth was not the enemy. It was something much larger. And the Empire, for all its might, was no match for what was coming next.